expert, the guy. Matty's got jokes and a wild ride. 30 minutes, no time to spare. Stack your lineup, win anywhere. NFL SuperCoach Halfa. Get your edge, get faster. Taylor leads, Matty's laughter. NFL SuperCoach Halfa.
Welcome to the NFL SuperCoach Halfa, with thanks to the Aussie Gridiron Network. My name is Matty C. Joining me today is the esteemed SuperCoach expert, Taylor Goodall. How are you, mate?
Matty, when people hear me talk, they often refer to me as a wonker. But when I play people in fantasy, I ask, are you dead, man? Because they call me Sunker. Let's go.
I've got to tell you, when you alter the pronunciation of a word in the first bit, I'm waiting with bated breath. I mean, we've been doing this for like 3 years. I reckon you've been doing rhymes of sorts on the show when we worked on the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show together. So when you do that, I know it's going to be a cracker.
My first thought was that I just went with wanker and then went sunker, and I was just like gonna, act like it was so cool to just like rhyme two things that didn't even rhyme. But you know what? I was like, I'll just turn wanker into wonker, and it'll work perfectly.
As we've learned, everything rhymes if you say it right. So there you go.
The people will be hot behind me. I know they will. Super coaches, let me know. What a great rhyme.
Please do. Find us on Instagram. We're through the Aussie NFL Fantasy feed. You can also find me at Matty Podcast and Taylor at Taylor41. Mate, the Aussie Gridiron Network, it's just been so great that we got the license from the network to start this show, because we were talking about this. Last Thursday, we came out with the idea to put this podcast up. We recorded it, got it out quickly. It's not even a week old. We're here doing a second one. And the response to the first one, mate, I was blown away.
It was enormous. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that gave us a download and gave us a listen straight off the bat. The feedback has been phenomenal. The amount of people coming back to me and saying what a great podcast and how topical it was, and people either that have been doing NFL fantasy for years or guys getting into it for the first time. It was amazing. So guys, like if you ever have any questions, please send a DM to Matty or myself. Like, we love that stuff. Like, we'll do mailbags on the future podcast. But guys, thank you so much for your support for that first podcast, and hopefully we can keep giving you great content moving forward. And if you guys need anything on these podcasts and you guys think of anything that we could delve into that maybe we haven't so far, please let us know, because we always want to keep improving our podcast for you guys.
I mean, and we want to know what you want to hear as well, because we've got ideas of what we think is useful, but it is always going to be more helpful if we can tell you things that you want to know about. So please don't be backwards about bringing the feedback. But mate, I can't believe the support. So thank you so much for making a little space for us in your busy week. And mate, this NFL SuperCoach is just going to be a whole bunch of fun. Mate, I'm a very, very seasoned NFL fantasy player. Tay, you've been a very seasoned NFL fantasy player, but mate, you've been in SuperCoach for 100 million years as well, and your results in SuperCoach have always been, well, to me, quite alarming, because I'm a very average SuperCoach player. So it's great to work with you, because I feel like I'm going to learn a lot along the way as well.
Absolutely, mate. Like, it's something that I've sort of delved into for a long, long time. I would still say that NFL fantasy has always been, I guess, my baby. Like, it's been something that I have always loved, and obviously going and doing a podcast on that is probably proof of that. But the fact is, I've always loved SuperCoach too, and honestly, the world's colliding for me is just an amazing opportunity, and I'd like to bring to SuperCoaches my, I guess, NFL fantasy knowledge, and then bring it together with SuperCoach knowledge to hopefully make a good, some good content for you guys.
Hey, it reminds me, the way you talk about that just quickly, about when St. George and Illawarra combined. There are a lot of people from each club who didn't like it, but I loved it because they were my two favourite teams. So it kind of sounds like you're having a moment like that.
It's like the George Costanza. It's any Seinfeld fans out there, the worlds are colliding. It's a perfect situation.
I love it. Tonight, we're going to talk about quarterback ownership. We've got some players whose percentages we think are either too high or too low. We're going to dive into that, and I can't wait. We're also going to talk about pods, because I think everybody needs good pods. And also, Taylor's going to dive into something I need a little bit of experience on too, loopholes. So we're going to cover all that tonight. Stay with us.
G'day, Gridiron.
Anyone that hasn't joined us before, it's pretty simple. Let's kick it off, eh? Is everyone ready?
The four horsemen of NFL in Australia.
If the sound ever plays, the pick is officially in.
Nick the Lineman.
So it's the worst against any team, and it's also the worst passer rating that he has against any team at 66.3.
Brad the Coach.
The Steelers have held the Ravens under 20 points in 7 straight games.
Isaac the Analyst.
For this one, I couldn't understand it either. Like, I don't think they're making the playoffs.
Ian the Viking.
Full of passion, full of fight. They might genuinely be interesting to watch again.
Previews, overreactions, and bloody best bets.
If Derrick Henry can get rolling, then I think it's no contest. The Ravens are going to win.
As a fan of the NFL, you hope he comes back because he's just an absolute beast when he gets on there.
That would be able to give, at least Justin Fields a chance to be able to build.
Let's move on. After that insanity.
So I just think, though, it's going to stop here.
Defensively for the Bills, I don't think that's actually going to combat what the Chiefs do already.
Yeah, I guarantee you, Pete would get down on his knees for that.
G'day Gridiron.
I love spreadsheets. I'm a spreadsheet man.
I love spreading my legs.
Twice a week, all season long on the Aussie Gridiron Network.
So we're going to dive into the top 10 quarterbacks by ownership percentage at this stage, because we can see early on there's some people we think really deserve to be there, and there's others we've got a little bit of concern on. Hey, Tay, did you know that Lamar Jackson led all fantasy scorers last year in most websites scoring? He is the top dog already this year. He's 37% owned. What say you?
Yeah, look, I'm not surprised. It was an absolutely phenomenal season for Lamar. He's obviously just always been known as an absolute fantasy gun, so I'm not surprised that people just kind of jumping onto the platform straight away is sort of jumping all over him and just seeing him as he is the top price. But I think that is also making him stand out like dog's balls even more. I will sort of touch on some stats from last year. He had 41 passing touchdowns, which is a complete outlier from his career. He averaged 20.75 touchdowns per season over his previous 4 seasons before that. I would say that they were marred with a bit of injury, so sort of take that, with a grain of salt, but it was definitely an outlier for him. I will say also, though, on the positive, he had an outlier to the negative side in rushing. He had 695 yards, which was down from 1,206 the previous season. He dropped down to 5 touchdowns from 7 the previous season. So I guess what you could say there is, yes, it was an outlier passing season, but there's also reason to believe that if he drops down in the passing side, there might be a world where he sort of lifts a bit to sort of even all that out in the running game. I believe he loses some value from his starting price. So I personally am not starting with him right now. But what I was going to say to people out there, if you buy him, do not sell him. Buy him because he's a keeper. Buy him because you believe he is the best fantasy asset, and just believe he's the best quarterback over the entire season, average-wise for the full season. Do not sell him, because if he has a couple of sort of average games, it kind of makes the whole thing pointless in the first place. So if you're getting him now, I'm personally not, because I think there's value elsewhere. If you're getting him, hold him. He's a keeper.
I think that makes total sense too. He's a massive investment. He's the most expensive player in all of SuperCoach at the moment at $30.1 million. Did you know there's a rookie who's second? Cam Ward seems to be a favourite with fans out there. He's at $4.7 million, which is about right for a rookie because he's got no body of work. Do you think 31% as the second overall most owned quarterback is a good scenario?
I'm kind of dumbfounded by this, Matty C. It's not so much that I don't understand why people are taking a shot at Cam Ward, because the actual price itself for him is great. I am not going to sit here and say that it's a dumb pick and that he's not going to make money. He 100% is. What I'm dumbfounded by, Matty C, and I'm basically jumping down to pair him with the 4th most owned in JJ McCarthy at 20%. I cannot fathom that JJ McCarthy isn't 110% owned. That's honestly the part I cannot understand. And honestly, he is a far better pickup to me than Cam Ward. Yeah. So I decided to pair these guys up, Matty C, and I've done a little stats deep dive on not so much them specifically, but basically the situations that they are walking into. So,
hey, all right.
So, look, what I thought I would do is I'd bring up some quarterback rookie passing stats over not so much the last year, because that was a complete outlier. What you saw last year, I think people are actually thinking that might happen again. Your Bo Nixes, your Jaden Daniels, they just absolutely sort of went out there and absolutely dominated. What I thought I would do was go back a year and the year before that. Basically, 2023, there was one rookie over 2,900 yards, and that was CJ Stroud. In 2022, there was one rookie over 1,400 yards, and that was Kenny Pickett with 2,404. Now, I can hear what the public opinion is saying. Taylor, you're an idiot. We're not talking about number one overall picks. We're talking about rookies in general, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm hearing your public opinion, so I'm going to bring you some stats of the last few number one overall picks in fantasy. 2024, Caleb Williams, quarterback 16, 14.97 points per game. Roughly, so in terms of the SuperCoach scoring, it's not too bad. That's going to sit you right under 30 points. 2023, Bryce Young, quarterback 23, 9.2 points per game. 2021, Trevor Lawrence, quarterback 23, 11.7 points per game. Basically, this averages out to a quarterback 21 finish and 10.95 points per game, roughly 22 points a game in SuperCoach scoring. Basically, if Ward was to do this, he would make roughly $8.4 million over an entire season at this pace. Sounds okay. I'm not saying he's a bad pickup, but when you compare it to this is what is crazy to me.
Here we go.
Quarterbacks under the KOC system, so the Kevin O'Connell system at the Vikings since he has been there for the last 3 years. 2024, Sam Darnold. And if anyone tries to tell me, oh, sir, like these are quarterbacks that are way better than a redshirt rookie, Sam fucking Darnold. Well, like no one wanted a piece of this guy last year, so don't give me that shit. Quarterback 9, 18.11 points per game, so roughly 36 points a game in SuperCoach. 2023, Kirk Cousins, quarterback 7, 18.7 points per game. 2022, also Kirk Cousins, quarterback 8, 17.15 points per game. An average of quarterback 8, 18 points per game or 36 points a game in SuperCoach scoring. Here's the kicker. McCarthy on this pace would make roughly $17.7 million over a whole season.
It's twice as much.
So for anyone out there, I've sort of crunched the numbers too. The SuperCoach value is basically 1.68 SuperCoach points per $1 million. So basically, you've got a break even of, say, 4 points. If you're going 5.68, then you're going to make $1 million. So I just sort of broke down the numbers on that one. So honestly, in general, that's, for anyone, that's just a bunch of stats I wanted to do to sort of back up my opinion. But in general, Cam Ward walks into the worst team from last year. Yes, they are helping their offensive line, but their offensive line is still in flux. It is going to need, I guess, Brian Callahan, who's the offensive line coach. He's going to need to still work wonders to make that probably a middle of the pack offensive line. And he is going to, like I said, the worst team in the league last year. They've basically got one good wide receiver in Calvin Ridley and not much else. It's a situation I just think people should be more like avoiding because I think they saw him go okay and he's the number one pick and he went all right in preseason. I'm telling you right now, the situation isn't amazing for Cam Ward, but JJ McCarthy walks into possibly the most sheltered quarterback environment you could ever be. An amazing offensive line, a ridiculously amazing coaching system that is always pumped out. I just brought it up. It always pumps out fantasy success. So I'm imploring people that JJ McCarthy should be far more owned than Cam Ward.
Mate, I'll move on to the next one because Josh Allen, who's a household name in fantasy sports, he comes in as the third most popular ownership for quarterbacks at 26%. That sound about right to you? Is that a good number, do you think, for a fellow like Josh Allen, who's got so many ways to score points?
Yeah, to me, I just think at his price, it offers a slightly better value than, say, Lamar. Obviously, both of them are absolute freaks and they're both just going to probably finish 1-2 again. They're in their own tier to me, those two. But just getting that sort of $2 million discount, I just think that's probably one I'll look to start with if I'm going a premium quarterback, which right now I currently am. 3,728 in the air is very respectable and very repeatable. It's not something that's an outlier to me. So, yes, he doesn't have amazing weapons in the passing game, but he just proved that he doesn't actually need to do a whole lot in the passing game anyway to be an amazing fantasy asset because 12 touchdowns on the ground is obviously what you're expecting out of him. And with the way that scoring is done in SuperCoach, you're basically getting 4 more points for a rushing touchdown than you are a passing touchdown. So these rushing quarterbacks are so much more valuable than the guys that just use their arm. What's funny, though, the 12 touchdowns on the ground was actually down from the previous season of 15. So this is why I'm looking at these numbers, because it's not like he had an outlier passing season. He didn't have an outlier rushing season because he's actually done better in some other seasons. So that's why I just think there's reason to believe that what he's done last year is actually probably his flaw. And he actually has reason to believe he actually could just lap the field and end up quarterback one easily. And you're just getting him at that $2 million less than Lamar. So I personally, if you're taking a premium quarterback, I would go Josh over Lamar.
Yeah, and I think that's wise too. I mean, at 15 touchdowns, that's an extremely good running back.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, this guy throws balls. Plus, he's got 30 touchdowns on his arm. So it's mental just how much value you can get out of him. And it's so stupid to say that he was practically toe-to-toe with Lamar Jackson in fantasy points in standard fantasy leagues last year. And he had a down year because Lamar had such a great year. From here, the ownership drops off a bit, and we go to Jaden Daniels, who's the 5th on the list. Now, keep in mind the 4th was JJ McCarthy at 20%. Jaden Daniels is at 11%, so it craters pretty quickly. He's at $25 million, though, so that's about $3 million cheaper than Josh Allen. Any concerns around this one, though, because he's just had the 1 year?
Yeah, so the concerns for me off the bat would be obviously sophomore slump. You know, we've seen in the previous seasons that there's been some guys that have really hit their straps as a rookie, and just for whatever reason, you know, defenses get tape on them. They sort of work out how to sort of curb these quarterbacks a little bit better. And I guess that's the concern. You've also got wide receiver 1, Terry McLaurin, still holding out. And still believe that gets resolved, but right now he's asked for a trade. It's kind of just in flux a little bit. So they're two things just to be wary of. Yep. At that price, though, I'm more than happy to have him. I don't currently, but 3,525 in the air, very repeatable. That, to me, that's not a super outlier. It's an outlier as a rookie. Like if you told me before the season he'd have 3,500 passing yards, I would have taken another.
It's unheard of for a rookie.
It is, but that was my proof in the stats deep dive before, that generally that doesn't happen. But for whatever reason, it was a bunch that dominated last year, and I think that's pushing, say, Cam Ward's percentage up because everyone saw what happened last year with rookies. But yeah, I just think with Daniels, there is obviously the downside of that slump, and then his wide receiver 1 being out. But I think his price is respectable. 11% is probably about right, and yeah, I just think if he doesn't fall into that slump, there's reason to believe in a second year, normally rookies actually do take a leap. There's actually more that take a leap than actually go into a slump. So I would say if you're taking the odds, there is a good chance that he actually hits his number from last year and actually beats it slightly. But I do think there's some other guys I just like a little bit better at the quarterback position, but I wouldn't hate on anyone for taking him.
Yeah, I just got reason to believe he does it a little better this year in terms of raw stats, like his baseline, because their rushing offense was not fantastic last year, and they haven't really done anything to try and improve that. The thing that I thought was interesting there was the 6 rushing touchdowns. I don't think that's something that can't be repeated either, but that's something he's got that's different from the next on the list. Joe Burrow's not getting you 6 rushing touchdowns. He's going to cost you about the same amount of money. Joe Burrow's at 26.5, so it's about a $1.5 million jump from Jaden Daniels in price, but they're both 11% owned. Do you reckon that's a real good reflection, though? Because Burrow kind of has to do it off his arm.
Burrow, for me, is an interesting one because it's easy to sit here and say, you know, it's better to go a rushing quarterback and, you know, that you get more points for a rushing touchdown. And generally that's what I'm going to be telling everyone. But Burrow's price is based off him not doing any of that. Like, it's based off him throwing a shitload of touchdowns. So it's hard for me to sit here and say, oh, he's bad value because he's only passing the ball, because he's just an awesome passer of the ball, and his offense is going to move so well. And he's got, what I said, 3 cocks in his offense. He's got T. Higgins, he's got Jamar Chase, and he's got Chase Brown. Brown. It is honestly a fantasy gold mine for that team. Their defense sucks. It's ranked in the bottom 3 this year again. Trey Hendrickson, their best defensive player, is holding out, so there's a chance he's not there too. So the defense could be even worse than last year. The only, I guess, slight concern for me is if you take a look at the numbers from Burrow, he had 43 passing touchdowns last year. That was an outlier for him. He had 35 touchdowns in his previous season where he played every game. In 2022, he had 35. He also had 34 a year before that. Now, I would also say that he's getting further into his career, and that was when he was quite young. So there is reason to believe he's just on a trajectory that's like what a lot of quarterbacks would do. So I'm not saying he's going to fall back to those numbers just because he's done it before. I just thought I would throw that out there, that because he doesn't run, he has to have 40 odd touchdowns to repeat his value. So if you believe he can, and you believe how bad this defense is, go for it. I've got no issue, especially if you're going to take Jamar Chase and stack that bitch up. That's going to be something that might get you bulk SuperCoach points this year. I would just be wary, because if he has a great year and throws 38 touchdowns instead of 43, you're going to lose money and you're not going to get value with that pick, even though Burrow had a very good year.
It's kind of the only reason I'm skittish on him. There were 3 players to throw 40 touchdowns last year. Burrow had 43, Jackson had 41, and Baker Mayfield had 41. And I'm nervous none of them will repeat that. The next guy on the list, and owned only slightly less, is at 9%, is Super Bowl champion Jalen Hurts. That's right, Manjot. I said Super Bowl champion Jalen Hurts. I know he's listening. $25 million you're going to pay for him, which is, again, around the same range as both Burrow and Jaden Daniels. Now, he, again, is a guy who's got a couple of ways to score your points, but because he was battling some injuries last year and he did miss an entire game as well, his numbers were slightly depressed last year. Can we expect value here?
See, I do believe that there's value here. Obviously, the tush push was kept, so that didn't get abolished, and he just has so many opportunities for rushing touchdowns, especially, which is obviously just fantasy gold and SuperCoach gold, especially with the way it's scored. He also has a harder schedule this year, which I actually think is good. Like that, you found with the Eagles in the past is sometimes they have 2 or 3 touchdowns and they're up 21-0 in the first half, and they just sort of run the clock out in the second half, and they do anything. And it completely, stuffs with like Jalen Hurts' ability to actually do anything with his arms. So I think there's reason for more passing yards this year and better game scripts. 2,900 passing yards and 18 touchdowns in the air is easily
low.
I think that's
very low.
Go up, and he had 14 rushing touchdowns, but like Josh Allen, it was actually down 1 from the year earlier. So that wasn't an outlier season. He's just, because of that tush push, he just gets his ass shoved in there, and he just gets so many cheap points. So I just think if this team's actually kind of having to score a little bit more, and if there's some offenses that can actually put some points on their defense, there's reason to believe that there's actually going to be some better game scripts for Jalen Hurts this year. Or if it's rinse and repeat and they just dominate again, you're just going to get what you got out of him last year, with still the ability to maybe take some of those rushing touchdowns back off Saquon. So, yeah, Saquon had some enormous plays last year. Maybe he doesn't have as many 60-yard touchdowns this year. So I just think there's reason to believe that Hurts' baseline is what he's priced at, and he actually has upside to beat it.
The fella behind him, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, it says. Just a real newcomer, only 7% owned. Haven't heard of this guy before, mate. Don't know what to expect.
Yeah, it feels like he's a newcomer because he's a completely different player than what we saw like 2023 and earlier.
Yeah.
His offense completely changed in 2023. He went from 5,200 passing yards to 4,100, then to 3,900 last season. Honestly, it was mainly just because their defense got so much stronger, and he lost the ability or the need to throw. Honestly, he just went from this like fantasy weapon or fantasy darling to just this game manager who didn't need to score a whole bunch of points. You saw obviously Kelsey, his main target, sort of start to age out a bit. And he just got wins, these 20-17, these 23-20 wins where Andy Reid didn't have to scheme up all these amazing plays and get Tyreek Hill open and stuff like that last year, because they lent on Steve Spagnuolo, who's the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs. They just lent on that side of the ball, and it just ruins your fantasy success. I brought up game scripts and how important they are to NFL fantasy on our first coach pod. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The Chiefs are in these game scripts where they don't need to pass the ball in the second half because they're leading 10-7 or they're leading 14-10, and they just run the clock out. So Mahomes has just been struggling, and honestly, I don't see why that all of a sudden changes. So I just think you're going to get probably what you got out of him with the slight bit of upside, but I just don't. I think there's far better options.
It's me like his offense is missing dynamic players in a way that they had him, plenty of them, in his early days, and they didn't mind running up the scoreboard. Now those dynamic players aren't there, and they're winning football games. Great. That's not where fantasy points come from, and it's not going to be where SuperCoach points come from. So it's important to separate those two, that we're playing fantasy sports. This isn't about picking a quarterback who wins a lot of games.
No, absolutely.
We're right down towards the bottom of this top 10 now. Mahomes is owned at 7%, and a guy who is right there neck and neck with him at 7%, who's a bit of a trendy sleeper as well in standard fantasy leagues. It's no surprise to see that translate over here. I don't think it's a surprise, but is Michael Penix, who's the new quarterback over at the Atlanta Falcons. And he got off to a pretty slow start last year because they'd run out Kirk Cousins to start the season. So his season-long statistics just aren't there, which is kind of why he's a bit cheaper. It's at $9 million. And there's nothing wrong with that price point. We expect him to well outproduce that. But hey, where does this fit into your ceiling scale on what he can produce?
I like him. I really like the offense. Great offensive line. He has a license to throw too. He had 3 starts at the end of last season, and he had 245 passing yards per game in those 3 starts. So he seems to me like he has, like I mentioned, that license, and he's got a lot of talent around him. He's obviously got Bijan out of the backfield, who's a great pass catcher. You've got wide receivers like Drake London and Darnell Mooney, and Matty C.
Love it.
Pitts. So we'll leave that to the public to decide whether that's actually a positive or a negative. But look, in the end, I like the price. He's one I won't start with because he kind of ends up in that awkward middle where I'm sort of going like what they call a stars and scrubs approach, where I'm looking at guys
Very
that
popular.
are stars and are going to get me the early season points. And so this is what they talk about in SuperCoach, Matty C. It's the old points versus money debate of do you play someone for the points even though they might not have an upside in terms of dollar value, but they're a keeper and they're going to bring you those early points in the season, or do you go a whole bunch of rookies and guys that are going to make you money, but they might not necessarily be scoring as many points? So what I'm kind of doing is I'm starting stars and I'm kind of benching scrubs, but they're not scrubs, but they're just guys that are going to make money, but I'd rather not start because they're still a little bit iffy. So he
in terms of money, they're scrubs, right? That's kind of how we're talking about it. Their money, the investment is so low.
Penix kind of fits in that middle where I like him, but there's other guys that are far less money, like far less starting value, and you can just take them and they've got just as good a chance of scoring points as he does. So it's like, okay, well, I'd rather just go a JJ McCarthy and sit him behind, a Jalen Hurts and a Josh Allen. So it's just a difference of opinion in terms of the way I build my team. But I've got no issue because he will make money and I do think there's upside.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel the same way too. What I like about him, though, is he's interesting, right? He's left-handed and he's playing on an offense, which we've sort of seen the Matt Ryan show there for so long. So it was kind of, is this going to be the next guy who's actually got a bit of a long future there? And for those of us who are NFL fans, it's kind of more interesting on a narrative basis than it is on a fantasy basis. This last guy in the top 10, Tay, I've got issues. I've got issues, mate. And I think it's just because he's been around the press and he's been on the field in preseason. I need to get an opinion from you on Shedeur Sanders. He comes in at a 4% ownership at the moment. I don't know that he's even going to be the starter, Tay.
I've got a laugh emoji next to it in my notes. It's honestly just people seeing the preseason and going, wow, he had a great performance, and people thinking, oh, why did they, the league's stupid, this guy's going to be so much better. That might all be true. But there's no way he's going to be the starter. you
fourth on their depth chart today.
He will
fourth quarterback.
He's
behind Dylan Gabriel. He's behind Kenny Pickett, and then of course Joe Flacco is king of that hill. There's no way he overcomes that in 3 weeks.
There's no way. It's a wasted pick. Like I said, I'll put a laugh emoji next to it because it's just people that probably watched Instagram reels and have heard of Shedeur Sanders because of his dad. And yeah,
the draft day.
It's a wasted pick, guys. Just don't do it.
Throw him back.
Wait till he starts. I've got no issue if, at his price, if, further down the line in week 9, week 10, they've exhausted, their 3 other quarterbacks and they've decided to see what they've got in Shedeur Sanders. I've got no issue if you make a play in the middle of the year, but it's just not a play in week 1. So please don't do it.
That is not just a suggestion. That is like a ball-faced recommendation. Slap yourself across both cheeks at the same time if you're keeping Shedeur Sanders. Okay, that's from your boys here at the NFL SuperCoach Halfa. Take a good hard look at yourself.
An uppercut to yourself, please.
Oh my God! Look, that's the top 10 quarterbacks. I think it was important to go through them, Tay. And the other side of this is, well, where do you get great value, right? It's not just from the guys who are the most owned. We've found some guys who are on the lower end who are points of difference or pods. Do you want to talk through that quickly?
Yeah, look, so you sort of outlined it, like a pod or a point of difference player is generally the idea is in Supercoach is you want to be looking for ways to differentiate yourself from others or the pack. And, you're trying to win Supercoach. It's great to say you finished 100 for whatever, but in general, you're really trying to win. So you're looking for upside. And the only way you can get that sometimes is to pick guys that a lot of others don't have. So that's the only way you're going to make a push up the rankings. Because if you just take a bunch of guys that everyone else has, then everyone's just going to end up the same sides and nothing's really going to happen. So really, in the quarterback position, because, we just saw Shedeur Sanders, normally in NRL pods are generally like under 10% owned. I even look to say, I'll go under 5% with quarterback. We even saw Shedeur Sanders was 10th on the list and he was under 5. So I was looking more like the 2 and 1% range. So my one is Jordan Love. 1% currently. I will say he did have a procedure on his non-frying thumb, but from all reports, it's probably not really going to cause too many issues. My main reason, and we've talked about it on our regular NFL fantasy show, that Josh Jacobs had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. Jordan Love also had 3 separate injuries that hampered his season. I just think he's in for positive regression. He went from 32 touchdowns 2 years ago to 25 last year. Obviously, he was hampered, and there was just, pretty much everything in their red zone was going through Jacobs and on the ground. I think, look, Jacobs is a great running back, and he's still going to have a fair share of touchdowns, but I just think if he has 8 to 10, you're looking at 5 to 7 extra touchdowns straight away for Jordan Love, and that's not even accounting for the fact that he's in the team most of the year. They're going to be a better offense with him there. So I think there's reason to believe there's even more touchdowns up for grabs for him. So I just think at 1%, he's a good shot. I don't currently have him in my team, but I think if you're looking around that like 18 million mark, I think he's a good shot.
I love that. And the guy I've got's in a similar range. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of the Jordan Love situation in standard fantasy anyway. So to hear that translates into here, I kind of love that. If you wanted to go someone who's middling who can grow, plus someone who is bargain basement who will also grow, and then sprinkle that extra money elsewhere, I think he is top of the list. The other guy I think, Tay, and stop me if you've heard this before, is Dak Prescott. We've talked about him a lot in our standard fantasy show. Check that out too, the Aussie NFL fantasy show, because we talk a lot of NFL fantasy and are in more standard size leagues. But what I like about Dak Prescott, and I did this for Jordan Love too, because I thought these two are kind of in the same boat. They're coming off years where they weren't fully healthy. They didn't play every single game. Their stats were depressed. So it means their investment is depressed. But if you took their stats from their full season the year before, and I don't think that's an unreasonable bar to look at, their situations haven't changed super big in that period of time. We think Dak Prescott's going to have to throw a bit. We know Jordan Love has a lot more room to take up more of the volume of that offense with his passing in a way that Josh Jacobs kind of aided all running because of the injuries. Dak Prescott had a 4,500 yard season the last time he played a full season, the year before last. He threw 36 touchdowns. He had only 9 intercepts, 242 rushing yards, and 2 more touchdowns on the ground. In the way SuperCoach is scored now, that's 860 points over the season, or in about the 40s across the full season. That's an excellent return considering you can see guys like Baker Mayfield's averaging in the 40s. Lamar Jackson's in the high 40s. This guy's half the cost of Lamar Jackson. He's $18 million. Jordan Love's numbers were almost the same too, Tay. You might like this. 41, 59 yards and 32 passing touchdowns, as you said. 11 intercepts. Fair enough. I think he'll bring that down. 4 rushing touchdowns and 240 yards. He would have scored 780 fantasy points in the way SuperCoach is scoring all these events. And that would put him right at the bottom of the 40s per game as well. So again, really strong, solid base of points for a guy who you can spend half as much as you will on Lamar Jackson, or $10 million saving on a guy like Josh Allen. So this is why I like them. This is, I guess, for the strategy of the guy who's wants to get the output of a top quarterback without investing in it and potentially sitting a scrub behind or a cheapie behind to take up that bench spot.
No, I'm with you, mate. And honestly, the addition of George Pickens for me, for him's massive. Like, he had
Changes it.
last year, even before he got the injury. But I just think the upgrade at wide receiver 2 is just going to be massive for their offense. Their running games sucks. If anything, it got worse. So they're going to need to pass that pill so much this year. And Dak's already proven multiple times that he can do it. So, yeah, I'm with you, mate. He's a huge target for me in regular NFL fantasy. But even in this, I think he's priced well below than what he can do. So I completely agree.
Yeah, you got guys who Jordan Love 1% owned, Dak Prescott 2% owned. I want to see those numbers boost because it makes sense.
Aussie.
It might be pretty obvious, but I am not Matty C.
NFL.
Absolutely stoked to have you on the podcast, mate. Welcome.
Fantasy.
Tay, I think it's time you just abused your mate here.
Would you rather be fighting zombies or aliens?
Find hidden gems.
And with that, we're into some breakouts.
I'm glad you're stalling because my results last week were a hot piece of ass.
We all had our struggles, mate.
We've unzipped the pennies and it's time to put the pennies in the pit. Let's do it.
I'm taking Trey McBride.
I'm just leaning on the old tuck shop, tuck draft.
And all of a sudden, he's just lighting them up.
Catch starts of the week.
I'm just going to go ahead and take Goff at Chicago.
So I'm going to go running back. I'm going to take Travis Etienne.
I'm going to go ahead and take your boy Ty Tracy.
I'm going to take Adam Thielen.
So I'm going to go and take Richo against Tennessee.
I'll take Matt Stafford.
Just a little float out the Dalton Kincaid.
I'm actually going to take Caleb against the Lions.
Friday and Sunday all season long. The Aussie NFL Fantasy Show.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
Thanks to the Aussie Gridiron Network.
Good to give me the dance floor. I'll probably fucking snap the floorboards.
Hey, Tay, I need you to explain something for me because I haven't been around SuperCoach long enough to understand how this works. You've been talking to me about the idea of a loophole. And I got to tell you, I don't really understand what you're talking about. Can you walk me through it?
Absolutely, man. I'll chuck in my own sort of dumbass story that I got so much shit about on the NRL SuperCoach page, which, yeah, it was kind of brutal. And we've already sort of burst through our half an hour show, boys. So, it's episode 2 and we're already basically spitting in the face of our own name of our podcast. But you know what? You're all having fun at home. So let's it's story time. But what I'll do is just... Obviously, NRL SuperCoach players know exactly what a loop or a loophole is. I just thought for anyone that might not have played SuperCoach before, I'll just explain what it is. So basically, you have a vice captain and a captain that you can use on your team. The idea of a loophole is that you put someone in your team on the bench that doesn't play. So you know they're not going to be playing in that certain week. And the idea is that you put your vice captain on someone playing early in the week. So for NFL, it would be someone playing at that 3 a.m. slate. So you'd put it on probably a quarterback. And if they go ham, they have a huge game and you decide there's no way that anyone else in my team's going to have that score, you would then put your captain on that person not playing, and then you would get the vice captain score doubled instead of the captain. So it's called a vice captain loophole. So yeah, the idea of that with NFL is I took a good look into it and I basically came up with one name that could possibly be viable, and it's Quinshon Judkins from the Browns. So he's obviously going to get suspended. He's obviously had a lot of off the field stuff, but he obviously had high draft capital. So I looked at him because he's bargain basement. You do not want to grab someone that's not bargain basement price as this, because you're completely wasting money. There's just no point. You're better off either getting a Judkins that might eventually turn into something later, or you're better off getting what they call enough in SuperCoach and just getting someone who will never play and just leave it there. And running it that way. But I just thought Judkins was one for people that were thinking that I'll do that early with the ability to possibly get something later in the season. But it is very questionable. There are guys like Rashee Rice and Jordan Addison that are going to be facing suspensions. you could possibly do this early. I just don't think it's viable because they cost too much. You're throwing away some of your salary just to be able to do a loophole. I don't think it's worth it. I also took a further deep dive into the scoring for it, and similar to the NBL SuperCoach, for anyone who did that, I don't think having a loop option is as viable as it is in the NRL, especially given the lower scoring. It makes sense in NRL because guys can score 150 plus and change a week. In NFL, your guys that you're considering looping might score 50 to 60 points. Then you were taking an AE, which is an auto emergency, which is basically the lowest scoring player on your bench. That might be someone that scored less than 10 points compared to the starter that you took off your field who might have scored 20 plus. So I basically feel like you're losing cash generation by having enough or having someone that's not playing. So I just don't think the risk or the loss of cash generation is worth it for that little amount of points.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, we're going to need to see a week where someone has the 5 touchdown, 250 yards kind of game to see how that works with a captain score on it, to see if this is worthwhile, right? Like, I think because we haven't seen this in action, and we can profligate and we can prophesize what we think is going to happen, and most weeks your best guy in your lineup isn't going to have that. So this does really call into question the benefit of doing that. Mate, rather funnily, I'd sort of come across this in my own world of trying to, game the captain thing. I actually didn't realize this was a viable strategy. I just thought I was a bit of an idiot one week where I'd left a player in who was captain and ended up not playing. And then the guy I had vice captain went ham anyway, so it kind of covered it. I actually didn't realize it was a viable strategy. So thank you for explaining that to me.
No problem, Matty, but I will go from the mentor to the goober when I tell this story right now. So
here we go.
Basically, on the weekend, I vice-captained James Tedesco, for 189 points. So I'm stoked. I'm going, here's an awesome opportunity to vice-captain Loop. So I've had basically what they call enough in my team for pretty much all season, and his name's Tui Simpkins, and he plays for the Titans. And
yeah, I've seen him, yeah.
I had him sitting there in my back row, so I hooked Viliami kick out, and I chucked Simpkins in, put him as captain, even stupidly made a post on the NRL SuperCoach page saying, Tui Simpkins to the rescue, and just basically took the photo of him as captain. Anyway, I went out on Sunday. I had to catch up with, I coach my son's soccer team, so I had to catch up with all the parents, and I wasn't even thinking to even look at my phone, because the thing is, Matty, that generally, or I say generally, literally every single time, if you're cut out of the team and you're not in the final 19 before they cut it to 18 on game day, you can't actually play. So Simpkins wasn't in that 19. So I thought he was the easiest loop and absolutely no chance. Anyway, I'm sitting there at about 3 o'clock. I go to look at my phone, and my phone is blowing up deluxe with people writing in that NRL SuperCoach group. Tui Simpkins, somehow, they had a late withdrawal of Mo Fodawaker, so they had to write to the NRL and ask for permission to bring Tui Simpkins in because you're not normally to. So he jumped into the jersey and played like 10 minutes or 15 minutes and scored 20 points. And so I got him as captain instead of 189 from Tedesco. It cost me 201 points. And I was in a first round finals game in my main head-to-head league, and it obviously cost me the win. I would have won by 150 instead of lost by 50. So luckily enough, I've got a second bite of the cherry in that league, but it feels like when that happens to you, it's not your year. So it was kind of brutal. Like, not that like is a once in a million thing that would ever happen. Yes, I could have checked the final team list, but I kind of just wasn't in the situation to do it. So I just thought for anyone that get a laugh out of that, and the SuperCoach nerds and love the loophole stories.
Oh my God.
So that's what not to do in NFL if you can get away with it. But yeah, I just thought that'd be a bit of a funny story.
Oh, there you go. And mine was the other way around in that, I'd left Cleary in my team and he didn't play. But my God, Kyle Week scored 3 tries from long range that week, and I was very happy. So it's just, and it kind of funny. Mate, I like that your story makes you seem human. That's the thing I like.
Yeah, we all make mistakes.
Hey, mate, we've made it to the end of our second SuperCoach Halfa. Well done, mate.
Absolutely pumped, mate. Again, thank you so much to everyone that's given us the time and effort to give us a listen. And like I said, we hope that everything that we're bringing to you gives you what you need to create your team. And like I said, if you need anything in these podcasts, please don't hesitate. We're not going to take it as a bad thing. We're always trying to, improve this product. So
100%.
Thank you for listening, but please reach out if you need anything. But thanks again, Matty. We've sort of pumped through the Halfa again. We're stretching out what we can call a half an hour show already, but mate, I feel like it was full of good stuff, and I feel like a lot of people will get stuff out of it.
It's an Aussie show. Half an hour is up to 45 minutes, right? That's what a half hour is in this country, mate.
It's less than an hour, so you could you can round down to half. Come on.
100%, mate. What's a few minutes between mates?
Exactly.
The other thing I just wanted to mention really quickly too is that we've seen a big influx of people to find this show, and I think they're kicking around the network and have a look at what other shows are around. Please do. If you're an NFL guy, then you might find G'day Gridiron a really good find. I love listening to G'day Gridiron. That's Ian, Nick, Brad, and Isaac as well. They're just fantastic. Follow them and catch their show. They come out on a Saturday each week, and then they have a second show during the season generally once the NFL kicks off. Tay, you and we team up twice a week as well for the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show, and it is NFC South week this week across the network. So those boys will be doing the NFL implications of what happens in the South conferences. You and I are going to be doing the fantasy implications with a great new guest on that show. I can't wait.
Can't wait, mate. Yet another great guest that hasn't been on already. And for anyone that wants to come on either of our shows, the SuperCoach show or that show, please reach out to us, because we are always looking for Australians that have a huge interest in NFL fantasy. We're starting to realise there's a lot more out there than we probably did before we started this SuperCoach show. So,
oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really exciting times for the network. So can't wait to sink our teeth into more of these podcasts. And yeah, NFL's close, baby. Cannot wait.
It is so close. He's at Taylor41. I'm at Matty Podcast. We're also at Aussie NFL Fantasy. Mate, we're going to get out of here. Thanks again, Tay. I'll catch up with you on our NFL show, but we'll be back for the NFL SuperCoach Halfa next week. Hooroo, fellas.
Hooroo, everyone.
SuperCoach Halfa. Get your edge, get it faster. Taylor leads, Matty's laughter. NFL SuperCoach Halfa. NFL SuperCoach Halfa. Get your edge, get it faster. Taylor leads, Matty's laughter.